This week's Torah portion is Teitze, and it's a continuation of Moses speaking to the people before they go into the land of Israel. They're on the cusp of going in. And this parsha is jam-packed. There are 74 mitzvot, 74 commandments given by Moses to the Jewish people. And what's amazing is that there are an array of mitzvot, and I want to just talk a little bit about what a mitzvah is. I think we should start there. So commonly, maybe people translate it as a good deed. I'd like to translate it as a connector. The root of the word mitzvah is to connect. So we're connecting through these mitzvot to the divine, to God. And in doing so, we elevate the world. We bring blessing, we bring light into the world. We work on ourselves, we perfect ourselves, and we create a relationship with God. So we're doing three things, I posit. We're bringing godliness more into the world, so we're elevating and perfecting the world. We're working on ourselves to make ourselves into the people that we can become, what our potential is, and we're coming closer to the divine. So those are three things that we're doing when we do mitzvot. And so they're opportunities, they're blessing. We're blessed to have the mitzvot to help us, guide us, to give us a framework for how to live our lives. Some of them are obvious, and we'll read some of those, and some of them are not obvious, and we'll also read those. But the injunction of the Jewish people is to do all of them. And some of them we actually are given a reward. One of them in this week's Torah portion, we're given a reward. But most of them we don't. So we don't really know which are the more important ones and which are the least important ones. They're all ones that are connectors. They connect us to the divine. They help us work on ourselves to become the best people we can be. And they help us to perfect the world. So 74 mitzvahs. And the one in this week's Torah portion that is given a reward is the mitzvah of not taking a mother bird when she's protecting her eggs. So if you come upon a nest and there's a mother bird in the nest, it says in this week's Torah portion, don't take the mother along with the eggs. If you do that, you will be taking advantage of the maternal instinct of this bird. So this bird is on the nest, protecting the nest, using her maternal instinct to take care of her young. And the reason why you can take her is because she's not going to leave her young. She's not going to run away. She's not going to leave them unprotected. And if you take the mother bird while she's protecting her young, then that's cruel. Don't be cruel. Be compassionate to this mother bird and don't take her and use her maternal instinct against her. And the reward is given in this week's Torah portion is length of days. So length of days is the reward also given in another parsha, in another Torah reading, for honoring our parents, if we are able to, and it's a very hard mitzvah to accomplish, but honoring your parents is also rewarded with length of days. Many other mitzvahs, we don't know what the rewards is, but that one we do. And I wonder if it isn't about the sanctification of life and the bonds that we have with each other. The mother-child relationship is such a strong bond that we don't take advantage of it. We don't dismiss it. We don't use it against the mother. It's a sensitivity that we have to have. And we have to think about others. We have to think about animals, and we also have to think about other people. And in this week's Torah portion, we learn some of those mitzvot of thinking of animals. Don't put, it says in this week's Torah portion, don't put an ox in the same plow with a donkey. A donkey isn't strong like an ox, and the donkey can't keep up with the ox, and it's cruel to the donkey to put him in a plow with an ox. Don't do that. Don't muzzle an ox while it's in the field, while it's treading on the grain or whatever it does, because it can't eat that. It's cruel to the animal to put him in a field where he can't eat the produce that he's working on. Don't do that. So we have a sensitivity to animals. We also have a sensitivity to people. Pay your wages on time. If somebody works for you, pay them the same day. Pay them when they expect to get paid. Don't put off paying somebody. If you're in the marketplace and you have weights and measures that are measuring your produce that you sell to somebody, don't make sure that the weights are honest, that they're accurate. Don't have separate weights for different people and mislead and be dishonest in your business practices, and you can extrapolate that. So be thoughtful and careful about how we interact with other people in the business world. We also have a mitzvah in this week's Torah portion to return a lost object. And a very uncommonly application of this mitzvah is to return the health to somebody. So a doctor or a nurse or somebody who is caring for somebody else is fulfilling the mitzvah of returning a lost object. Somebody who has lost their good health, and you are able in some way to return their health to them, is fulfilling the mitzvah of returning a lost object. So that's one application. Another one is to work on our souls. We're returning our souls to ourselves. We're in the month of Elul. We're coming up to Rosh Hashanah. We're working on our inner selves. We're working on our soul. We're getting in touch with our soul. We're returning ourselves to our soul. Perhaps we're returning that lost object. Where is our soul? Let's reclaim it. Let's find it. Let's work on it. Let's help it express itself. Let it be the one that leads us. And that segues me to the first sentence in this week's Torah portion, which says, when you go to war, and the war doesn't have to be a physical war of people fighting each other physically. It can be that when the soul comes into the body, that when we are in this world, soul and body, that the soul comes into the body to express itself, and it's going to fight a battle to be able to express itself. And it says in this week's Torah portion, when you go to war, God will help you. So when we are in this battle of trying to freely choose to do the good, to choose life, to choose blessing, to choose to do the right thing, God will help us. And that's what we learn in the beginning of this week's Torah portion. God will help you in this battle to do the right thing. So we're given 74, in this week's Torah portion, 74 of the 613 mitzvot are given to us in this week's Torah portion. And as I mentioned, they are the conduits by which we bring light and blessing into the world, by which we perfect ourselves, by which we raise the world up and we connect ourselves to the divine. So it gives us that framework, this guidebook. And as I mentioned, we don't take the mother bird along with that. We don't take advantage of the maternal instincts by taking the mother bird when she's protecting her nest. Another application of this maternal child relationship is in this week's Torah portion, where it talks about a son who is described as a rebellious and wayward. We have a rebellious and wayward son who doesn't listen to the voice of his mother and doesn't listen to the voice of his father, and goes on to describe the actions of this wayward son. But in all of history, there has never been a wayward son. However, we learn about this son, and it says that he doesn't listen to his parents. And I wonder whether, when we talk about the child to the parent, but the parent to the child, is the child listening to, is the mother or the father listening to their child? Is it a two-way street? As much as the parent might want to tell the children what to do, the parent also has to listen to the child, also to create that relationship, to create that sensitivity to another. We have to listen to the other. We have to listen to our children. We have to listen to our spouses. We have to listen to our parents. We have to listen to each other. Who are you? What are you saying? How can I help you be the best you can be? How can I step back and listen to you? And I think the episode of the wayward son is perhaps one lesson that comes from that, is the two-way listening that has to be done to create a meaningful relationship, such that we don't go off the rails, or your child doesn't go off the rails. Includes an aspect of listening to each other. So bottom line, what are we doing? We're working on ourselves. It's character development. We're learning how to be sensitive to each other, how to care for each other, how to be kind to each other, how to think about the other. When you have a rooftop, make sure that there's a guardrail, a parapet around your roof so people don't fall off. Negligence. Don't be negligent. Think ahead, like preempt what you could do to be kind and compassionate and caring for somebody else. So put that parapet up and make sure that people don't fall off. We're told to remember what happened to Miriam. What happened to Miriam? She spoke slander or gossip, very slight slander, but for her it was huge, against Moses. Be careful. Don't speak ill of others. Don't slander others. Don't gossip. But don't use your language in ways that can be harmful for another person. And so many of these mitzvot, these connectors, these get in touch with your soul opportunities are helping us create ourselves into the best people we can be, by helping us work on our characters, by helping us go above and beyond what we might otherwise be. When I mentioned about returning the lost object, or returning health, or returning to your soul, returning objects, we go above and beyond. There was a story a few years ago about a rabbi in New Haven, I believe, and he bought a desk from an old lady, and in the desk, as he took it apart to get into his house, he found a bag, and in the bag was cash, like huge quantity of cash. And the woman who sold him the desk had forgotten all about it. She was an old lady, and he made, obviously, the right thing is to return it, and he returned it, and she was completely flabbergasted. It made the national news, I believe, but the point was that it was a no-brainer for him. Of course he's going to return it. He didn't buy the contents of the desk. He bought the desk, and so he returned the money. Go above and beyond whatever inclination he might have had to keep that money. It's not his. It's not what he bought, and he returned it because that's the right thing to do. So if we look at the mitzvot as ways in which we can work on ourselves, and then at the very end of this week's Torah portion, we read the famous saying that we do right before, when we read this again right before Purim. It's about remembering Amalek, this evil man whose army attacked the Jewish people right after they came out of the Red Sea, as they're leaving Egypt, and he attacked them from behind. And it says in our commentaries that he introduced doubt into the people's minds, like, is God really with us? Is God really helping us? He introduced a cooling down of the waters, like people started to be maybe a little bit less passionate about their relationship to God, like, who's this person? He's attacking us. Is God with us? A doubt was formulated in the people's mind. And throughout history, the descendants of Amalek are out to destroy the Jewish people, introducing doubt into the equation and cooling off the waters. And so a response is, don't forget Amalek. Don't forget what he did. What did he do? Introduce doubt and cooled off the water. So in response, let's be passionate. Let's operate from a place of commitment and from conviction, in response to, as a way to remember Amalek, what he tried to do along the way. And so when we go out to war, when we are in the struggles of life, God is there to help us. And sometimes we know what the reward is by sanctifying the maternal instinct. We know that that sanctifying life is a huge value in the Jewish people. And when we sanctify life, then we are rewarded with life. You're rewarded with length of days. But most mitzvot, we don't know what the rewards are, so we have to treat them all as equally holy and equally passionate about fulfilling them. And I bless us that we have many opportunities to fulfill many different mitzvot, and in doing so, we bring more light and blessing into the world. We are able to raise our bar and become better people, and we can also come closer to the divine.